This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You know, we can be guilty as we see stories in the news, we see issues around the world of assuming, I guess, or maybe just telling ourselves that they're not happening in our own backyard. And that is certainly the case with human trafficking. It's a conversation, it's a reality that understandably makes some people uncomfortable. For others, maybe we don't talk about it because we don't think that it's happening in our neck of the woods, so to speak. Alberta-based country music star Paul Brandt has made it his life's work, at least for the last 20 years, to have this issue all over the radar of his fellow Canadians. And he's stepped far outside, I'm sure, his comfort zone in the music industry in addressing this and putting pressure on politicians at every level to take it more seriously. Of course, Paul Brandt also recently in the news for a social media post that some folks assumed may have shone light on his political perspectives when it comes to Alberta's separation. We're thrilled to let you know that the country music star is joining us right here in the Real Talk studio in this episode to talk about it all. This episode wouldn't be happening without the presenting sponsorship of our friends at Hanson Distillery. You know, you can always find them online at hansondistillery.com or wherever fine Alberta spirits are sold. Hanson is Edmonton's original distillery, rooted in prairie grit and a rebellious spirit, known for authentic small batch whiskey, vodka, gin, moonshine, and those unique liqueurs like that cherry whiskey that you're seeing on your screen right now. Crafted right here in the Metro Edmonton region with local Alberta ingredients. Every bottle tells a true story of passion, heritage, hands-on craftsmanship. So raise a glass to Real Talk and Real Spirits. You can visit Hanson on 174th Street, 111th Avenue, just north of Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, or check out their latest creations in Alberta liquor stores. It's proudly local and always original. Hanson is made right here. What a pleasure it is to welcome one of Alberta's most well-known and probably well-celebrated over the years country music stars to the Real Talk studio here in the historic Mercer Warehouse. Paul Brandt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here with you.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Let's get this stuff out of the way right out of the gates.
Okay.
It's sort of, you've always been the guy that people sing your songs and quote your lyrics when they're celebrating Canada, when they're celebrating Alberta, and then all of a sudden, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, the news hit and Alberta's premier confirmed it, that you had seen a speaking gig for Alberta's teachers canceled, presumably because of a social media post featuring some of your lyrics, quoting independence. What's the deal?
It's interesting to me. A song that I wrote in 2004 has created such a stir. It's been fascinating. I've been on the road now for 30 years, traveling, all over North America, all over the world. And when we started, we were doing about 180 shows a year and seeing audiences, all over the place. And we just finished a tour with Terry Clark. It was 8 weeks across the country from Newfoundland, where I'd never been before, all the way to Vancouver Island. And I played that song every single night. And even in these divisive, political times that we are living in right now, I get up on stage and talk about Alberta Bound, and I was a little bit nervous. Not really sure how people were going to take it. And what I found is by the end of every single evening as I'm playing that song, everyone in the audience is singing along. I mean, even to the "I've got independence in my veins" line, because I would frame it in a way where I'd explain to people, when I play this song these days, I think a lot about what kind of a city, what kind of a province, and what kind of a country I want to live in. And then I sort of throw the challenge back at the audience, and I say it's because it's up to us. It's up to us to decide. And there's just silence. And then I start to play "Sunset 40 miles to Canada," and all of a sudden you hear every voice singing back. And that kind of unity is incredible, and it's the kind of unity that's required in Canada to really fully address the issue of human trafficking. We all have a unique role to play in that. And what I found is, it makes people nervous to talk about it. It's an uncomfortable topic. Not everybody sees the solutions the same. And so what I always do is I just keep on moving forward until I discover whether or not a person is for us with this work or if they're pushing back against us. And, since all the controversy here recently, we've actually seen incredible interest. I've got teachers groups and associations from across Canada that have reached out since then and said, we want you to come and speak. And that's wonderful. So, we are always open, to having the opportunity to speak to people about this issue of trafficking, which is one of the fastest growing crimes in the country today.
Does it make you uncomfortable when your name is in the headlines, your name is in the news when it comes to
I've been doing this for 30 years,
controversial?
man. No, I mean, it's like, if people are talking about you, that's a good thing. I think people know my track record is about bringing people together, and that's always been the goal of not only my artistry, but also this work that we're doing in trafficking. And it doesn't make me nervous to hear people talking about it.
I think if anything, like you said, it gets your name out there and it gets more people debating on whether or not the speech should have been canceled or whether or not entertainers, should be held accountable for public political positions. Kind of an interesting week for us on the show. Just yesterday, sitting in this chair, Corb Lund is in here talking about his coal petition. And it's not lost on me that we have singer-songwriters and prominent country stars that are talking about things that I don't know if I would say have nothing to do with country music, but, Corb is here talking about coal. And then when Alberta sovereignty or Alberta separation comes up, kind of a remarkable moment on the show, he says, I'm not taking a position on this. He says, I'm not getting political on this. He says, I'm a one-issue guy. When it comes to my politics, nonpartisan, it's about coal. I think some people saw this as like your coming out party as an Alberta separatist. What would you say to them?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think that everyone has the opportunity to make their own determinations on how to interpret art. And for me, I was posting, about my Alberta pride, but I was also posting a song that was, back in 2004 that had come out. And really, for me, nothing has changed. I agree, with Corb. I think that the challenge with artists, we're people, and some artists want to go out and stand on a soapbox and talk about politics. That's not really what I've ever really sought to do. I really, I guess similar to him, like to figure out and pick the exact topic that I want people to understand and know about. And usually that's the new music project, or for me, this issue of trafficking.
Will you be taking a position publicly on Alberta's future in Canada?
No, I think that that's something that is important for everyone to do their own soul searching on. And I tend to be the kind of person that doesn't like to, jump into that kind of a fray.
Well, you're not afraid to jump into the human trafficking thing. For about 20 years, you've been doing this, and I think people will be familiar with the Not in My City initiative, which launched perhaps more recently than that, the last 5-6 years or so. What was it like when people talk about human trafficking? I think for a lot of folks, we should define what we're talking about here. But what was it that first put the issue on your radar?
Ryan, I mean, I'm here in town with the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking in Persons. We're doing consultations over the next 2 days with frontline agencies that are involved in combating human trafficking in Edmonton area and across Alberta. But I was first introduced to this. My wife and I, we were touring together. She was in the band with me. We were doing 180 shows a year, and we had a day off. We were living in Nashville, and she loves crime drama. I'm not exactly sure why. I think it's because she's trying to kill me and get away with it, maybe. But she wanted a day off, and we were watching Dateline NBC, and it was a documentary called Children for Sale. And that was the first time that the issue of trafficking hit our radar. We saw an undercover sting happening in Southeast Asia on this documentary, and we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know where to place it because it didn't seem to impact our lives, but we also couldn't believe that this horrible crime was happening to children and that there was a demand for this. So 2 weeks later, we were invited by a humanitarian organization to go to one of 90 countries around the world to see the work that they did and maybe become spokespeople or donors. And we had the opportunity to go to the place where that documentary was filmed, and it blew our minds. It changed our lives. My wife Liz lets me explain her history because it's not always obvious why the guy in the cowboy hat is doing this work. But when she saw what was going on there in Cambodia with children that were being victimized, sometimes 6 to 8 times a day, being trafficked, it was very traumatic for both of us, but especially for her. She's a survivor of child sexual abuse. And when she saw that, she had a pretty severe PTSD reaction to the point that she needed to be medicated just to get her back here to Canada. So that's when it made its first dent in our lives, and we kept leaning in. The cowboy hat gets me in a lot of doors, and so I started meeting politicians and thought leaders and change makers in this space. and just kept on pushing forward to try and find a way to use the Paul Brandt platform to make a difference with this. And that's really how Not In My City came about. We did this through my alma mater at Mount Royal University. The business and marketing students there worked together with me to build the Not In My City program, and now it's exploded to a national organization.
When we talk about human trafficking, essentially we're talking about sexual exploitation, not exclusively involving minors, but in many cases.
Let me explain that. So there's a trafficking survivor that I work with quite regularly from Ontario, and she was trafficked, domestic sex trafficking here in Canada, named Carly Church. And there's all kinds of like legal definitions and wordy definitions when it comes to trafficking, but quite simply, whether it's sex trafficking or labor trafficking or organ trafficking, there's over 20 different types of trafficking that have been identified and new forms every day. But it's force, fraud, and coercion facilitated by a third party for profit. Someone does something to you and they make a profit from you. That's how Carly describes it as a survivor. And I think that's probably the most succinct and accurate description for people who are just learning about this issue.
Were you surprised at the reality around human trafficking in Canada and in your home province of Alberta?
Blown away. When I was in Cambodia the second time, I was in an area where there's a lot of organized crime, a lot of obvious trafficking activity. And I met a little girl on this dusty street in Cambodia who was 5 years old that was being trafficked 6 to 8 times a night. And I think in that moment, that was my aha moment. I think for most people, and you can check out notinmycity.ca, learn more about the issue of trafficking. We have a free 25-minute e-learning course that you can take there. But for most people, it goes from head knowledge to heart knowledge, where all of a sudden they go, okay, those are the stats. Now what am I going to do about this? And when I met that 5-year-old, I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to teach my son about how to respect and interact with women? And my daughter, when she's old enough, and she is now, she's 15, the average age of being trafficked in Canada is 12 years old. 12 years old. And she's going to ask me, Daddy, what did you do when you met that 5-year-old girl? What did you do about it? Awareness with action ends exploitation, and you have to do something about it once you know about it. And I wanted to give her a good answer, so we've leaned in with this, anti-trafficking work. And I came back here to Canada over this last 20 years. I've met victims that same age of that little girl I met in Cambodia here in Canada that have been trafficked here. Not My City focuses on the childhood connection because we see this as a progressive vulnerability. The mean age of being first sexually abused in Canada is 9 years old.
Jeez.
Average age of being trafficked is 12. Average number of years a person is trafficked is 7. And now that person is 18 or 19 years old, and often society sees them as someone who chose it. But was it really a choice?
It's heavy stuff.
It is. It's hard.
Talking about
it's hard.
I'm sitting here and I know we'll see reflections here from our audience as well here in our live chat powered by Park Power. We're talking to Paul Brandt. If you're just joining us in our live stream presented by California Closets, you're talking about 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 12-year-olds, and it needs to land with people.
Yeah.
Like me just sitting here and wrapping my mind around what you're saying. This is horrific.
It's heavy, and I think for most people, they hear it and they're like, I always say you want to be the least popular person at a party, talk about human trafficking.
Yeah.
Like, it's heavy stuff, right? But we always root this in hope. So I brought you one of our bright yellow Not In My City pins here, and I'll tell you a little bit about the way that has worked for us. We have an airline industry program with the airports across the country. Only 6 months ago, we had 14 airports across the country, and it was just getting started. It has exploded. In this last 6-month period, we've gone from 14 airports to over 40. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. But airports are a key strategic partner because survivors and victims of trafficking are trafficked through airports and predictable routes. And I was going through one of our partner airports. I'd done a presentation, talked to frontline agencies, law enforcement, and it was in Fort McMurray.
So you're talking to like police officers, customs officials,
and people who work with
guards.
anti-trafficking NGOs, that kind of thing. And I'm going back home to Calgary, through security, and it's that awkward moment with the cowboy hat off, boots off, belt off, the security guards rifling through my stuff. And she noticed my yellow rose pin, and she stopped dead in her tracks. And this is what I want to emphasize for people who get overwhelmed by the difficulty of this topic. There is hope. And I remember she looked at me, and she looked me dead in the eye. She said, I took your training a month ago, And 2 weeks ago, I identified a trafficking victim, and I knew what to do.
Wow.
This is what we want to see across the country. And we're hearing these stories now from agencies, businesses, organizations that are taking the airline and airport industry's lead and going, we want to be a part of the solution too.
Just out of curiosity, do you happen to know in that circumstance, or generally speaking, what a law enforcement officer or somebody else might be looking for? I mean, aside from the obvious.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the airport setting, there are a lot of obvious signs. You'd notice in an airport setting. I don't know if you've noticed recently, if you've traveled, they ask you to control your own ID. There's a reason for that. Traffickers will control the documents of their victims, and they won't let them speak. The victim often will look like they don't really know where they are. They might seem disoriented. There are certain tattoos and those types of things that you can look for that are actually market brands that traffickers use to brand what they would call their merchandise. Traffickers in Canada are making over $280,000 per year per victim in our country. And they often refer to their group of trafficking victims as their stable of victims. I can't think of a more dehumanizing phrase, and that's really what's required to traffic a person, is to see them as less than. So a lot of these signs, you can learn about it at Not in My City. Take our free e-learning course. It only takes 25 minutes, and you join the over 22,000 Canadians from across the country who've taken this course, and you'll be equipped and empowered to know what to do when you see it as well.
You, if people check out your social media, you're on Instagram at I'm Alberta Bound.
Yep.
You're on X at Paul Brandt, and people will see your continued advocacy. In this case, that I'll point to, holding the federal government accountable. You're tagging the Justice Minister. In this post, less than a day ago, you say 105 days ago, I asked Sean Fraser to attend urgently to the flawed Supreme Court of Canada decision, which actually ignored previously approved measures to denounce and deter child sexual abuse and exploitation material activity. You say 105 days ago. You go on from there. People can check it out for themselves.
Yeah.
What sort of a grade would you give Canada on how we're handling this?
I think it's abysmal. I think that the way that we're handling the safety of children in this country is not aligned with the heritage of our country that has stood up for freedom since its inception. And I look at what's going on that front. Child sexual abuse and exploitation material is the marketing department for human trafficking. And the Supreme Court of Canada, they struck down mandatory minimums for that crime. And, there's a lot of debate back and forth about whether mandatory minimums are the way to go. There was a decision called the Fraser decision that they, in essence, ignored to strike these mandatory minimums down, that made it clear that denouncement and deterrence of this crime in particular, especially as it relates to children, is so important. And we're sending a signal to pedophiles, to traffickers, to people who would use or create child sexual abuse and exploitation material, that Canada's open for business. It's the wrong message to send, and we're calling on the federal government to act urgently in this instance.
This is one of those situations where, like I said in my opener before we welcomed you to the show officially, if you're just joining us, Paul Brandt, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that it's happening. It's a gut punch to even say it out loud, but it's happening right now in Calgary. It's happening right now in Edmonton and in Vancouver and in Winnipeg and in Saskatoon. I think other people might just kind of want to ignore the reality, because once you start thinking about it, it's kind of difficult to stop thinking about it. You don't have to have kids to be troubled by something like this. You've talked a lot about your educational course. You pointed us to resources. We should note that it was National Human Trafficking Awareness Day just a couple of days ago. What do you hope that the average person takes from this interview? What do you hope that the average person does in their own world, in their own sphere of influence?
Well, I guess awareness plus action ends exploitation. And we want people to be empowered and to educate themselves. Carly Church, trafficking survivor here in Canada, who's doing amazing work as an advocate now on behalf of trafficking victims. She always says it's virtually impossible to traffic an empowered child. And I would extend that to say an empowered family, an empowered community. When we know the signs and know what to look for, we can push back against this crime. Police reported human trafficking incidents in Canada have tripled over the past decade. More than 600 incidents were reported in Canada in 2024, and 93% of these victims are women and girls. And 93% are actually Canadians. And these are things that most people aren't aware of and don't know. So I'd say don't shut it off. Don't feel like there's nothing you can do. We all have different capacities to affect change when it comes to the issue of human trafficking. But once we know about it, we do all have the same responsibility. And I see you wearing the yellow pin, and you put it on right away. I wear a cowboy hat. We all have different roles, but if we're pulling on the rope at the same time, we actually can affect change with regard to this issue. And I think Canada can lead the world in it.
I think of other frontline workers, in this case, teachers. I'm actually curious to ask the speech years that was canceled recently. What were you hoping to say to that room full of teachers? What was your message?
Well, what's interesting is you can actually watch the speech, unless it's been taken down, on the Southern Alberta Teachers Association website, because I gave the same speech just last year, and received a standing ovation, and it was very, very well received. And we hope that we'll still have the opportunity to speak to teachers across the entire province, in that same capacity. But basically, it's giving that one-on-one awareness, talking to folks about the issue and how they can affect change and empower kids, and just knowing that it's an issue is important. I don't know if you traveled a lot before 9/11. I sure did. Back before that time, there was no security. I mean, you'd fly through the airport. I'd be doing sometimes 5 cities a day. Like, you feel a bit like a FedEx package in the promotion world back when we were promoting, new singles and those kinds of things. When you traveled through airports without security, it was just open and free. But after 9/11, we realized, hey, there's a risk. So what we used to hear all the time in airports over the loudspeaker, if you see a piece of unattended luggage, please tell security, right? And I remember walking around, if you saw a piece of unattended luggage, you weren't terrified of it. You just knew what to do when you saw it. And that's the same approach I think Canadians need to take with human trafficking. Don't be afraid. Don't be terrified. When we stand up to traffickers, amazing things can happen. In fact, we can disrupt their activity in exploiting the most vulnerable in society. So you don't have to be afraid. You just have to stand up and know what to do when you see it.
Yeah, I think, teachers have a tough job for so many reasons, and I think one of those is being expected. It's like when you go in for your annual physical with the doctor, and it's like the doctor can't miss that little lump, right? Or can't miss the spot on your skin, and it's like teachers are responsible, as class sizes increase especially, of having a clear understanding of maybe what red flags might look like.
Well, that's a great point. I just spoke to Grand Rounds emergency rooms down in Southern Alberta, and then actually with a pediatric group here at the Stollery, and often on the 88% of trafficking victims access health care while they're being trafficked, and someone fails to intervene on their behalf. And so that's a huge gap in our response, and so we're trying to work towards a better, more robust response. And a lot of times in emergency rooms, if they identify a trafficking victim and that victim doesn't take the exit, if they don't receive the resources properly, it takes an average of 7 times for them to trust the system enough to even come forward. The whole unit will start to feel like it was a failure, and it'll demoralize them. And I think the same for teachers. When they see kids that are in a difficult spot and then they're not able to provide those resources right away, or the kids don't take them, that can be demoralizing. But it's not your job. It's not anyone's job to solve human trafficking. It's our job to be aware of it and to know what to do when we see it. And that's a part of the reason we're here working with frontline agencies with the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking in Persons. I'm the co-chair of the governing board of that organization. And we're trying to build a more robust and coordinated response here in the province so that when that teacher sees what's going on, and we're already seeing this happen. We saw it happen just recently in a case in Southern Alberta. When a teacher comes forward and says, I need help, the system's ready, and we can wrap around that victim.
And this, when you're talking about coordinated responses, I'm assuming you're talking about there's got to be healthcare resources, there's got to be counseling resources, local law enforcement, of course, as well as national, like RCMP level law enforcement, municipal, provincial, federal government leadership on this. Is part of your advocacy across all of those lines?
100%. Again, it takes all of us pulling on the rope at the same time, and it's amazing to me. I chaired a task force for the government, and we put forward a report called the Reading Stone Report with 19 recommendations on how to address and suppress trafficking in the province of Alberta. 18 of the 19 recommendations were accepted. The 19th is still under review. That was connected to labor trafficking, organ trafficking, and 24 million were put forward over the period of 4 years to address and suppress trafficking in the province. And it was amazing to me that it was basically every ministry that was required for a response. And so we formed a cross-ministry working group on the issue of trafficking, because people start moving in their directions and they're not seeing it through that trafficking lens. That report was called the Reading Stone Report. And the reason is this: the Reading Stone was the first version of the eyeglasses made in antiquity. And so a wisdom and knowledge keeper would hone a clear stone so that you could see things that you wouldn't have been able to see previously, and it was seen as magic. But what we decided to use as a metaphor for this report was, if you could look through the reading stone, the lens of a human trafficking victim, you might be able to see this issue more clearly. And what we're seeing in ministries, in frontline agencies, with law enforcement, when they look through the eyes of a survivor, through the eyes of a victim, you see things you never would have seen before. And that's really the kind of response that we're trying to create here in Alberta.
All of the numbers that you've shared are troubling, obviously hugely impactful. You share that 93% of human trafficking cases in Canada involve Canadian citizens. Are you talking about specifically on the survivors or the victims of human trafficking in that case? Or are we talking about, obviously people facing charges as well. This is something that is a reality in Canadian communities. And we see troubling, stories. I think of the really prominent ones, like, Graham James back in the day, maybe not officially a human trafficking type situation, but we feel like when our systems fail us, a lot of times, I think as caregivers or parents in particular, you hear folks express shock and dismay that this happened under their nose, or it happened in their community. What's your message to parents? I would imagine that there are countless families that never thought that this would be something that would impact somebody that they care deeply about, a family member of theirs, and they'll say, we had a functional, not a dysfunctional family. There was love in our household. These types of things. What's your message to parents, to grandparents?
I'm a parent, and I've got a 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old daughter, and it's terrifying. It can be very challenging as a parent, especially with everything coming our way right now. There's so many vulnerabilities for our kids that we didn't face when we were their age, and a lot of them come through their phones and through social media, and now with AI and the things that are going on that front, with the ability to generate child sexual abuse material. There was a case recently in the Calgary area where an 18-year-old boy was just taking pictures of friends in different high schools around the city of Calgary. And then he was able to take their pictures and turn it into pornography. Well, his friends were underage, and that's child sexual abuse material. Trafficking is an outcome of vulnerability, and parents, we're protective. We want to protect our kids. And so I think when you hand your child your phone, you have to be thinking you are handing them potentially a loaded gun. And they need to know how to use that properly so that they don't hurt themselves and hurt others. And so I think looking for resources on that front is important. You'll hear a lot of times people will say that the majority of trafficking victims know their trafficker. We have to qualify what that means. That doesn't mean that the person or the child picked a wrong friend. Trafficking is a relational crime. When people think about trafficking, they think about chains, but they should be thinking about trust. So as a parent, when we are very aware of the friends and the circle of influence that are on our kids, we can be that sort of protective shepherding force in their lives. And I think that's really the key. And so what we would do, again, is push people towards the e-learning program. Know what to do when you see it. If your kids are coming home with friends that you've never heard of before, they're doing things they hadn't normally done. And this is hard because teenagers do these kinds of things all the time. But also maybe come home with 2 cell phones. Maybe come home with gifts, like expensive gifts. Someone is actually pushing them in a direction to influence them, and we have to be aware of that as parents.
What sort of an impact has the release of the Epstein files and all of that international attention had on this?
Huge. I think that when I think about the Epstein files, I think that in a lot of ways history is repeating itself. We look back at the abolition movement in the late 1800s with William Wilberforce and the work that he did for over 40 years. Literally 3 days before he passed away, he was given the news that slavery had been abolished, and he kept on pushing forward. Human trafficking is modern day slavery. And one of his most famous quotes was, you can never say again that you did not know. You can choose to turn a blind eye, but you can never say again that you did not know. And that's really what we're seeing with the Epstein files. we're understanding this isn't a conspiracy theory. We don't know all of the different dynamics, what's going on, who was doing what, but we do know that children were being exploited for profit, and this is something that a lot of people have sort of been sitting on the sidelines going, is this really a thing? And for me, doing this work for the last 20 years, I'm like, yes, it's a thing. And finally, people are noticing. It's horrible that this happened to these victims, but it's happening every day in our communities and in our country. And we can do something about it when we're aware of it. And we stand up and we say to leaders, politicians, this isn't okay for us. We would encourage people to go to the Not in My City website and sign the petition to send a message to Ottawa that we need to restore mandatory minimums for child sexual abuse and exploitation material, and let your elected officials know this is a voting issue. We want a safer country for our kids.
Have you fought, like in the most recent federal election or in other elections over your 20 years in involvement on this, to have it as more of a prominent election issue? I mean, it's so tough to get something
right?
at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think that talking about the safety of children is probably the safest way to discuss this. And it's not popular, especially in political circles, to focus on prevention. And I've been really grateful for this government here in Alberta and their willingness. I've heard, prominent politicians that are supporting the work that we're doing when pressed in interviews. Well, we want to. Where are the dollars going, and where's the outcomes on all of this stuff? Yeah, that's important. Less than 6% of anti-trafficking NGOs measure for outcomes, and you can't change something you can't measure. So we're definitely doing that. And
less than 6%.
Less than 6%, right? 100%.
What?
So we're changing that in Alberta. But we've had politicians actually say to the press, yeah, we're measuring for outcomes, and that's coming. But what we're focusing on is prevention. And it's hard to get up on a podium as a politician and talk about how many trafficking cases you prevented. Mm-hmm. Like, that's hard. It's from a political standpoint, but it's what's required. We have to focus on prevention, and it is quite simple. We can shift this from a high-profit, low-risk business to a high-risk, low-profit business just by showing the traffickers we know what you're doing and shining a light on it.
You can learn more about the Not in My City initiative that Paul's been talking about by checking out notinmycity.ca. We'll link to that in the show notes on YouTube and on podcast. And you can always share your story with us by sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Thanks for your advocacy on behalf of the kids, on behalf of survivors of human trafficking. I got a ton of respect for it. I was talking to this audience. I mean, of course, we talked about your speech being canceled and all that kind of thing, and everyone's got different opinions on it.
Sure.
But I was thinking back to, I don't know when it was, maybe about a year and a half ago, I think. You and I were chatting at our mutual friend Andrea Heinz's book launch.
She's amazing.
That book, When Men Buy Sex, Who Really Pays? And it was a powerful day. I don't know, a few hundred people probably in that room all coming together. I don't care, people don't need to care, how you vote or which political party you support to know that you need to support something like this. And that starts with our young people.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Before you go, I said this to Quick Dick McDick. I don't know if you know him, big YouTube personality out of Saskatchewan the other day. I said, we can't have out-of-towners come in here and leave a bottle of whiskey on the table and not send you on your way with it.
Oh, that's sweet.
So
Thanks
I know
so
our
much.
friends, you heard me romancing the prairie grit and the prairie spirit that goes into every bottle of these. So a bottle of Rough Stock Reserve will send this down to southern Alberta back with you as a token of our appreciation for your good work on this file.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing this, Paul.
Great to see you.
Yeah, Paul Brandt, of course, country music star, and like we said, co-chair of the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking, and founder of Not in My City, again at notinmycity.ca. Environmental journalist Arno Kopecky in just a moment. First, I want to make sure that you know what's going on at Kubi Renewable Energy. Their 2026 installation schedule is filling up fast, and if you're looking to get solar panels up on your roof, whether that's your farm, whether that's your office building, whether that's your home, now is the best time to reach out to their team and make sure that project gets engineered as soon as possible. The team at Kubi offers white glove service, meaning that they're going to handle your application for any relevant government programs or financial incentives. They're going to make sure that your engineering happens without you breaking a sweat. And of course, They're going to deliver the cleanest install that you could possibly imagine. All of these and more are reasons why Kubi is Western Canada's fastest growing solar installer. You can learn more about the benefits of going green by visiting their website. Request a free quote today at kubi.ca. That's KUBY.ca. A shout out to our friends at Friesen Brothers who are supporting the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute all the way through the month of February. Of course, it's Heart Month. And if we're being honest, Friesen Brothers is supporting the Maz, as everyone calls it, year-round. It's been an ongoing commitment, a part of Friesen Brothers' recognition on the importance of family and supporting our communities. Friesen Brothers in 16 different Alberta communities, an incredible success story, starting with a small butcher shop in Hinton, and over the past 71 years, growing from there. You can learn more about their Heart Month commitment by checking out their website, Friesen.com. Friesen Brothers is proudly Alberta-grown and Alberta-owned. Hey, if you're digging this jacket that I'm wearing on the show today, for those of you listening on the podcast, trust me, it's a real beauty. I want to let you know where you can find one of your own, and that is, of course, at The Helm Clothing, either online at thehelmclothing.com or on their beautiful 3-story retail experience in downtown Edmonton. If you go to the website right now, thehelmclothing.com, you can browse their latest arrivals, but you can also take a look at the final days of a really impressive sale that they've got going on. You can knock an extra 20% off all sale items, from suits all the way down to luxury casual wear. When I need to look my best, regardless of the circumstance, I trust the team at The Helm, and I recommend that you do the same. A reminder, if you're ordering at thehelmclothing.com, if you're ordering online, the promo code REALTALK, all one word, will knock 10% off your entire order. That's REALTALK at thehelmclothing.com. And speaking of heart health, a shout out to our friends at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation, who are doing amazing work at the C.K. Huey Heart Center. As you heard on our most recent episode of the show with Dr. Ben Terrell, the chief of cardiology at the C.K. Huey, the innovation there is leading the nation. But it doesn't happen without our financial support. And that's why we're inviting you to join us this Friday, the 27th of February, at Heartbeat Hideaway at Atrium at Sabor. This is going to be a wonderful evening of fellowship. Of course, some cocktails, some small bites, all in support of the C.K. Huey Heart Center. You can get your tickets by checking out royalalex.org. Just follow the links. Or you can check out the website directly at heartbeathideaway.ca. It will sell out, so make sure you get your tickets today. Again, that's Friday, February 27th at Atrium at Sabor. Heartbeat Hideaway in support of the C.K. Huey Heart Center at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. Well, we always love when this next fella makes time to join us on the show, but we've always had to do it remotely.
Thanks for having me in this legendary studio. I've been waiting years to be here.
Well,
that is a nice jacket, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
No word of a lie.
Yeah, the team at the Helm. I promise Real Talkers, I'll never lie to you. In our ad reads, I'm putting my name behind it. I'm putting my voice behind it.
Yeah,
so they'll look after you. It's a block from here. You can go check him out right after we do this interview.
All right, well,
tell him Jespo sent you.
I'm the fact checker here for those just listening.
Well, I appreciate that. Big part of what you do.
That's right.
I think the last time that we invoked your name on this show, it was based on your coverage, kind of, sort of, no offense.
It depends where you're going with this.
Of Conservative Convention down in Calgary. And it was a unique circumstance because obviously everybody was paying attention to what was going on down there. And then and kind of that big moment of Conservative Convention would have been Pierre Poilievre's leadership review. Everybody wants to see what the score is. And a number of different sources of information, I suppose, on that. You got the big mainstream media outlets. You've got some independent so-called conservative outlets or conservative platforms. And then you, who like
banished to the sidelines.
Tasha Sheridan, same deal from conventions past, kicked outside. Although I suppose never let in the door in the first place. They didn't let you in.
Well, it was a big building. I was allowed in the lobby where a lot of people were lingering, and the weather was nice. But yeah, they wouldn't give me a press pass. They wouldn't tell me why they wouldn't give me a press pass. And the irony was that they were giving they had developed a new sort of accreditation for influencers. So all of the, Moose on the Loose, Berta Proud Dad, The Pleb Reporter, Mario, Salvi, all these guys who are, if anybody who pays attention to this weird netherworld of conservative far-right influencers who were effectively cheerleaders for Pierre Poilievre, they got front row seats. They were allowed in. They had a party at the end of it, and the local Conservative MP got on stage with them. So it was kind of a surreal thing to watch these guys get access and become sort of let through the front door. The Conservative Party is always, I was on the campaign trail during the April election and saw firsthand then how prominent these influencers were to the Conservative Party's messaging apparatus, the architecture of that, but they were always held kind of at arm's length. Like there would be a press pen at each rally, and the journalists were allowed in and the influencers were not. So there was, because these guys have some pretty crazy views. They're real conspiracy theory promoters, love Trump almost universally. So the Conservative Party, I think, was like, okay, it's great that these guys have a huge reach. They've got huge audiences, but we got to be a bit careful. This time, at the Calgary convention, that boundary was totally dissolved, and they were allowed in the front door and celebrated as part of the Conservative Party's communications strategy, basically. Yeah.
I think people that, for the most part, like partisan conservatives that would support a scenario like you found yourself in, right? Like you being denied the press pass.
Yeah, I was there on behalf of National Observer.
Well, they'd
Canada's
say,
National
you're
Observer,
just here to stir
Yeah,
shit
you're
up,
just gonna-
Arno. Like, why would we let you in? You want to take a big dump on our party convention? Of course, we're not going to let you in.
Yes, and it's a private event, so in that sense, they're absolutely well within their rights to do whatever. But it became the story. I think it sort of shot them in the foot a little bit. People learned that they were barring independent journalists, and to not even give a reason why, just to come out and say it. I think it was pretty not surprising, but troubling all the same, just to see that happening. And it's one thing to deny. I don't know. I think once you start denying critical media access to you, it's a slippery slope. And if you look at what's happening, if you want to see where it goes, you can look at what's happening in the United States. And Trump is now, he barred the Associated Press from the White House press pool for a while because they wouldn't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America like he wanted to. And they had to fight in court to be allowed back in. And at the same time, Trump's White House has opened the floodgates to allowing influencers down there into the White House press pool and into the Pentagon press pool. And so these guys are getting access. Millions of people see them as journalists and as credible sources of information. But that you can be an influencer, you can have a blog or a podcast or a TikTok, YouTube show that has millions of people. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But to be sort of cosplaying as a journalist with absolutely zero respect for the facts or absolutely zero inclination to push back
Zero
on the party's
accountability.
narrative, zero accountability. If you lie knowingly or unwittingly, there's it's just a whole different category of information purveying. And of course, we're living at a time when there's a whole new kind of, I'm an environmental journalist, and a term that I heard recently that caught my attention was information pollution. It's a new kind of pollution where there is just this information ecosystem we're living in is so polluted now, and the Conservative Party just seems to be dumping toxins into that information ecosystem.
Was there a specific story or a specific angle that you were looking to cover at convention, or were you just sort of showing up as your scribe, so to speak, to write about what you were seeing?
Well, you show up with an open mind, or try to anyways. We have our biases. I think I was overall curious to see what the overall, was there going to be any introspection on the part of the Conservative Party under Pierre Poilievre's leadership. Of course, they had just lost an election that months before it was announced. They were ahead 20 points in the polls, then they lost. Any question as to why? Any soul searching? Like I said, when I was on the campaign trail in April and going to, I went to about 15 of Pierre Poilievre's rallies from Halifax.
15?
Yeah, I followed him around the country. So I went, I was here in Edmonton, I was in Nanaimo, I was in Saskatoon, I was in Toronto. Everywhere I went, thousands of people came out, and it was really striking. These people had been marinating, I would say, in some of these conservative influencer information ecosystems. They were all very Trumpy. They they believed a whole bunch of things that were just, palpably untrue. So I was curious, how is that going to compare to a convention where it's not, I don't want to be, it's not just random people coming out to support a leader. It was those rallies were kind of a freedom convoy revival tour. So how is this convention going to compare to that? And sure enough, I was talking to delegates, party brass, who run this party and who were the ones who had the vote for Pierre Poilievre. And they had the exact same narrative. I spoke to so many people who said, Donald Trump, he's a great president. He might be a little bit tricky for Canada, but he's doing really good work. And, ICE is, of course, why wouldn't you want to, deport violent criminals, And there was just zero introspection on that. There was a ton of support for Alberta separatism. I spoke to Mitch Sylvester, who was not at the convention, but he's one of the leaders of the Alberta separatist movement. He was, there was a lot of sympathy for him and his movement among, again, these are the party brass. These are not people who came out from their basement to wave a flag at a rally. These are the folks who decide the direction of the party and the policy of the party. That's what these conventions are all about. So that, to me, was really striking. And that was the tenor that I wanted to gauge.
How did the conversation go with Mitch Sylvester?
Oh, my God. So I'd been trying to reach out to him. I reached out to his people. I was like, can I talk? And they're like, 5 minutes later, yeah, give him a call. Here's his number. I called him. And he, I think they're clearly hungry for publicity and for press. So he called me, he answered my phone right away. And I said, hey, so, I'm Arno Kopecky. I write for Canada's National Observer, wondering if you could talk about, you recently went to the United States, I hear. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk about that. That's people. And I said, well, why not? And then he just opened the floodgates and talked about it and talked about, it was one of those examples. It was one of the more striking conversations I've had. He just, pretty soon he was talking about how the United Nations has been really hard on the Caucasian race. I asked him if he was worried about Trump and the Americans, seizing Alberta and Alberta's oil. He had zero concerns about that. He thought Alberta's military would be beefed up, and that the federal government had taken Alberta's military and degraded it. It was sort of nonsensical with a bit of bigotry mixed in, and I just thought it sort of again illuminated the ethical and logical tenor of the separatist movement, at least of their leadership. Which isn't to say that there aren't legitimate concerns about, I think it's important to acknowledge in this conversation that there are legitimate concerns in Alberta about what people are going through, from healthcare to education to housing to inflation, all of those things. We can talk about the relationship with Ottawa, but the idea that separating is going to somehow improve the country, the province's fortunes, feels quite nonsensical, and that conversation with Mitch Sylvester was just a clinic in irrational delusion.
Interesting to see Pierre Poilievre, I guess it was about a week ago, come out and just talk. I mean, essentially, and we played the full clip on the show, basically say, like, this is a national party. He didn't sort of, like, put Alberta separatists in their place. He didn't, like, look in the camera and talk down to Alberta separatists, but he did, for I think the first time in at least a while, and at least the most public statement that he's made in quite some time, make clear his position, where he stands on Alberta's future in Canada. Do you think it was sufficient in your estimation?
I mean, I would like to hear him call out the bigotry and the lunacy that's there, but I recognize he's sort of painted himself into a corner. I think a lot of his, the separatist movement was born in the ranks of the Conservative Party. Conservative leaders, including Pierre Poilievre, have been throwing matches all over the place, blaming Ottawa and telling Albertans that they're getting screwed. None of them seem to really appreciate that Alberta is producing more oil than ever before in history, that pipelines are, we just built a new pipeline. All of these kinds of things are getting, just completely ignored, I think, by Pierre Poilievre. And it would be lovely to see him, I wouldn't expect it to happen, but I would love to see him, or whoever the next Conservative Party leader is, call some of this stuff out, especially given the geopolitical context of everything that's going on right now with with a rogue nation to the south of us getting crazier every single day. And there are very credible scenarios of the U.S. taking advantage of Alberta's separatist movement. And I don't think Poilievre has really acknowledged any of that stuff.
Have you seen this video that he just released, like within the last 24 hours? It's kind of like it's shot like it's shot kind of Rick Mercer style. Like back, remember Rick Mercer's? So I want to play. Yes. I want to play this for our audience.
Let's have a look.
And one of our big things is like I want to play it in its entirety. It's like 2 minutes long, but I think it's worth playing it in its entirety. And then I'll get your take on this.
Sip of coffee here,
It's not being received well. Generally speaking, Andrew Coyne here says basically this is just sad and desperate. Go out with some dignity, which is, but Pierre Poilievre says that today, as we're speaking, Arno's joining us here on the 24th of February. The Conservatives will introduce a motion to cut back what they're calling deluxe benefits for fake refugees, to deport non-citizens and foreign nationals who do crime. I don't know what do crime. Anyway, I digress. Here's the video, and I'll get your take on it. We'll jump into our live chat, see what the audience has to say as well.
Awesome, yeah.
Fact, 6 million Canadians can't get access to a family doctor. Fact, it takes 30 weeks for the average Canadian to see a specialist. Fact, while you can't get health care, Liberals force you to pay higher taxes to fund deluxe supplementary health care benefits for asylum claimants who've been rejected, who are non-Canadians, non-permanent residents, and have never paid taxes in this country. Fact, the reality is that these services include many things that are not covered by your public plan, things like physiotherapy. Fact, the cost of providing these deluxe supplementary benefits to asylum claimants has gone up by 1,000% under the Liberals to over $1 billion. Money diverted away from our health care, jamming up our system and increasing our wait lines. The Liberals destroyed our immigration system with numbers that overwhelmed our jobs, our health care, and our housing. Not only that, they've made it so that when someone is here making an asylum claim and they commit a crime, they could indeed have lower sentences than if a Canadian had committed the very same crime. This is unfair, and it's time that it changed. That's why tomorrow, Conservatives are moving a motion to change it. The motion would force a review and a cutback in benefits to asylum claimants to ensure that non-citizens and non-permanent residents do not get superior health benefits than Canadians. Second, it would ensure that those asylum claimants who are here and have been rejected only get life-saving emergency care and not special care. And third, it would ensure that judges give the full sentence and allow for a complete deportation of foreign nationals who are non-citizens that commit crime in our country. Enough is enough. We can't allow foreign criminals to take advantage of our system, false refugee claims to overwhelm the services that you pay for. We need a system that allows you, as a hardworking Canadian, to benefit from all that you've contributed to Canada. Quick and high-quality health care, good jobs and housing, safe streets. That's the Canadian promise. We're going to restore fairness. Sign our petition, back our motion, tune in tomorrow for the debate. Let's ensure that all Canadians get fair treatment.
All right, so tomorrow is today. This video up from Pierre Poilievre. I have my own thoughts on it, but is that your first time seeing it?
I had seen a brief clip of it. I hadn't watched the whole thing like that.
Your thoughts on the strategy and the content?
Yeah, so scapegoat is the first word that comes to mind. He's scapegoating immigrants and refugees, which I think is a pretty despicable thing to do. It echoes exactly the narrative coming out of the United States. I feel like what Pierre Poilievre has always been doing quite well, I would say, is identifying some real struggles that Canadians are having, especially working class, blue collar folks who are, in the bottom half of the income spectrum. And there's legitimate concerns, absolutely, with healthcare and education, as I was saying earlier. And so he identifies those, he hammers on those. I think that's super legit. But then to go and flip and let's blame the refugees and the immigrants for that is a pretty awful moral twist, I think, ethical twist, and it's just also totally untrue. If you the image that he paints of immigrants and refugees living high on the hog, taking our money, sort of sipping champagne while they do the crime, getting these light sentences is just totally detached from reality. My wife delivers. She works at a birthing clinic in Vancouver. She works with a lot of immigrants. They work with a bunch of the immigrant population. Some of the stories that she shares of people who have gone through 4 different countries to get to Canada with babies, who arrive here with nothing. Perhaps the husband has been killed along the way, or that's why they had to flee the country in the first place. They are destitute and desperate and afraid, living in very marginal conditions. And the fact that we can help them a little bit, by giving them free diapers and things like that, in the case of my wife's work, is something that makes me feel really proud of Canada. And the idea that is somehow connected to the problems that are real in society it feels really, really, really low.
For me, it's just like there's a lot of. I mean, I think. Number one, because I'm just a nerd when it comes to like video edits and production. And
right. Yeah. Well, he stuttered a few times at the start.
Stutters a few times. It's Tracy D's wondering, is he getting winded while he's walking? I just strategically, the video does not make him look strong. So I if I were a conservative strategist, I would be concerned about that. But it also comes across as very Trumpian, talking about things like deluxe healthcare, talking about fake refugees. I don't have a problem with deporting legitimate criminals that are stirring up shit in Canada and have no business being here.
Sure.
I think the average Canadian could probably land somewhere in the middle when it comes to common sense approaches to that. But that's not the whistle signal that this is sending. And to me, I just find the timing of this and the delivery of it particularly interesting when Canadians are especially touchy about Donald Trump. Like, for perspective, this video comes out. He's not referencing Donald Trump. He's not talking about Donald Trump.
But the subtext
He's not showing
is just
Donald Trump
screaming out,
right?
Yeah.
But instead of when you look at the the general analysis, once the dust had settled after the most recent federal election, I think a lot of people, in particular folks whose votes may have been up for grabs or who have voted conservative in the past and didn't, would say that they didn't feel like Pierre Poilievre distanced himself enough from Donald Trump. He didn't convince Canadians en masse. And I know conservatives would point to some tidy election results that look pretty good on paper, but at the end of the day, they lost, right? Not unlike Canada's gold medal game against the Americans. Not a bad game, but you still lost. And he just didn't convince Canadians, I don't think, that he was the man for the moment in dealing with Donald Trump. And this strikes me as doubling down on that. And if I'm a conservative in particular, like it or not, I mean, this isn't like a liberal or left-wing talking point. If I'm a conservative, I'm looking at this going, we're getting further and further and further away from forming government, not closer.
Yeah, which is what he probably, that was what was fascinating about the convention. It was like, okay, is he going to actually pivot here or acknowledge anything or change in direction? And I forget the exact language, but he basically said, I've listened to you folks, and what I've heard is not to listen to those people urging me to abandon my conservative values, which was to say, I'm not changing. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I think this video is a really perfect example of him doubling down on this very Trumpy language and messaging that has, the bind that he's in, which I don't see a way out for him. He doesn't seem to be trying to carve a way out, is that a huge portion of his base loves that. But a bigger portion of the electorate hates it. And, I think that is a real indictment of his version of conservatism, which is absolutely blind to the historical moment that we're in. If you can look at what's happening in the United States and not see an absolute threat to everything that we hold dear and that we have built in the post-war order, and to see that as something worth emulating, I think that is just a total indictment of your reason and your moral compass and your political strategy, like all of the above.
Arno Kopecky joining us in the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse. Can you hear the sound of the snowblowers outside?
I don't get
your
this
West
in
Coast
Vancouver.
lifestyle.
I am home for a reason. My heart is singing here.
We welcome you back
Thank you.
amid the din of snowblowers outside.
Go throw a snowball at someone as soon as I leave here.
In our live chat, powered by Park Power, Dubia says this reminds you just like when Donald Trump was going to bring down grocery costs. Dubia says Pierre's talking about problems we have, but doesn't strike me that he has any real plan to fix them. Super Chat Ken wonders, was this targeted to like Ukrainian refugees as well, or just like non-Judeo-Christian folks? Nia's wondering if Poilievre even understands asylum seekers. Says the percentage of these poor folks using healthcare compared to the born here Canadians who are like unemployed or criminals, says, this comes across as disgusting. Bucky says, I'd be really concerned if my comms team was telling me to make more videos like this. He said they're identifying real struggles, but then they're attributing them to vulnerable minorities.
Yeah.
I think this could really blow up in their face. And it's not like this video is going to bring down Pierre Poilievre's leadership, but it's
emblematic.
Like, it's a continuing trend.
Yeah.
I hope to ask him about it. The door's wide open. We're talking to his team. I'd love to welcome him to the show and talk about his plan. I think he'd, appreciate a question like that. I think it was, who was it in there that just said he identifies issues, but he doesn't have a real plan.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Yeah.
You can let us know what you think about that to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I mean, on the flip side, Kyle says that you, Arno, are totally detached from reality.
There are those
so not everybody's cheering along the same lines through this interview. Hey, before we thank you for your time, I got to ask you about your coverage on the Cowichan decision. I know that this is obviously a huge one, and it's gleaning international attention. Some of the biggest political commentators in the world are touching on this, but I would wager a guess that many Canadians aren't aware of what's going on.
Yeah, so I don't know how much it's on the radar here in Alberta, probably not as much, but for those who haven't heard of it, in August, the Supreme Court of British Columbia dropped a bomb by granting Aboriginal title to the Cowichan Nation to a chunk of land in Richmond, BC, which when you land in Vancouver at the airport there, that's Richmond. So at the mouth of the Fraser River, the Cowichan Nation has got a piece of land now that is theirs. And this has triggered an immense public backlash. It has touched on a number of I think it's hit a bunch of nerves. One of them being just, well, what does reconciliation look like? Does it have to be more than words? There's some private properties here. So the mayor of Richmond, as soon as that decision dropped, he sent a letter to about 150 residents of Richmond saying that their property title was at risk and could be compromised. And then from there on, it just exploded and became this international story. David Frum in The Atlantic wrote a story about it. Bill Maher has been talking about it. It's been the CBC, Matt Galloway just did a 30-minute documentary about it. So it's a pretty big deal. David Eby has also fought against the decision. There's so many threads, I don't even know where to begin, but it's the history of this story is pretty incredible because the Cowichan Nation, they had a little village where they would go every summer. It's quite an incredible story. They live on the east coast of Vancouver Island, and every spring they would en masse take all of their canoes over and paddle 50 kilometers across the Strait of Georgia with all of these huge planks and beams in these pontoons. They would canoe across the ocean basically and set up this village and harvest salmon all summer. And this became a reserve that was promised to them 100 some years ago by the governor of British Columbia at the time. And then what happened, instead of a reserve being created for them, was that the person in charge of delineating the reserve sold it to himself and a bunch of speculators. And so the Cowichan Nation has spent the last 150 years trying to get it back. They went to England twice to petition the king in person. They tried to go through the courts, where they were barred from even having a case for about 80 years. And then finally now, 150 years later, after the longest trial in Canadian history involving 86 lawyers, they got this title. So
the longest trial in Canadian history.
Yeah, 513 days. It's the longest trial in Canadian history. The evidence was exhaustive. And that's what's been fascinating about this, because I've had interviews, I've sat down with the mayor of Richmond and said, okay, I get that you have to protect your constituents' interests as you see them, but can you acknowledge the historical irony here that people are worried about losing their homes and their properties? And guess what happened to the Cowichan Nation, as happened to First Nations all across this country? And just a blank wall. He looked at me with a sort of a blank stare and an ahistorical kind of refusal to acknowledge that there is also, that the Cowichan have any valid concerns here. And I think it needs to be said that the Cowichan have very explicitly said, we are not taking anyone's homes away. We don't want to do that. We know what that's like. We're not going to do it again. What we want is access to be able to fish. We would like a little piece of land to be able to, rebuild some of a piece of our village. I should also point out that a bunch of this land has been turned into a dump. There are some industrial lands, and there happens to be about 45 private homes. So it is, it touches on a nerve because, of course, if you were to receive a letter from the mayor about a court case that you hadn't heard of, and suddenly you're told by your mayor, hey, your property title might be at risk from these, the Indians are coming for your homes, it has triggered some valid concerns. But the inflammatory, Mayor Brody and others as well, including some of the provincial government, have said, the entire land title system of BC and possibly Canada is at risk. This could crash our entire economy. So they're going from a very specific case that was argued, like I said, the longest case, and this wasn't just a whim of the court. This was exhaustively argued with witnesses from all sides over a relatively tiny piece of land. So to extrapolate from that to say, wow, all of the entire land title system, everybody's property rights in British Columbia are at risk, as many have been saying, including David Frum at The Atlantic, and that argument has become so inflammatory, and it has really triggered a lot of anti-Indigenous, I would say quite racist backlash. That, again, I hate to be partisan about it, but it really tends to be conservative pundits and politicians. John Rustad, the leader of the BC Conservatives at the time, said, well, that's it. We need to stop all negotiations with all First Nations on every subject in British Columbia until this is resolved. Things like that are just totally unhelpful. It's worth pointing out that John Rustad was himself the Minister of Indigenous Relations in British Columbia. So this is, I'm diving into this story right now. It's got a ton of threads, and to me, it touches on reconciliation. This is where the rubber hits the road, I think, the land question. And it's really fascinating. It's a little bit heartrending. You just had Paul Brandt in here talking about his really poignant and powerful story about child trafficking. A huge part of this story, I've talked to the mayor and some of the city councilors, and they say, well, this happened 200 years ago. We need to focus on where we are now. And if you talk to them, they're like, no, this is still alive. These children got set, it's not just that they had a village taken away, but then they went to residential schools. 7 generations of children were forced apart from their parents, forbidden from speaking their language. These folks went to Cooper Island. Cowichan Nation went to the Cooper Island Residential School, which is one of the most notorious residential schools in the country. Super well documented. Duncan McHugh did an 8-part documentary for CBC about it. I recommend anybody listening or watching to watch that. Children were raped, children were killed, disease was rampant, children died trying to get away from it. They swam in the ocean and drowned trying to get away from this residential school for generations on end. This was a huge part of the testimony. It's hard to speak about without tearing up. And the resident and some of the people that I spoke to who are city councilors and the mayor, they just said, well, we need to, people focus on the dark side of residential schools, but there's been a lot of good things that happened out of there too. And to hear that said in the context of reconciliation and this land claim, when again, the Cowichan themselves have been unbelievably gracious in saying, we are not coming for anybody's land. What we want is acknowledgement that this village was taken from us, and let's negotiate about how we can make that right. And that's an argument between the Crown and the Cowichan Nation. So I could talk about this all day, but
that's
we're probably
obvious.
running out of time.
And I appreciate how you approach your work. I think, for the average person, and you don't fault people for being busy, and everyone has a lot on their plate. And,
of course.
People have heard about land back, and they maybe sort of have a general understanding of what that would imply or what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hear this story just at a surface level. They maybe read a headline, or maybe they hear from their friends a couple of details, and then they believe the ball is rolling on all this. And I think it's important to have, ethically driven, fact-checked, empathetic, insightful, responsible journalism, long-form journalism on stories like this, and I appreciate the work you're doing on it. Cary Williams is hanging out. He's going to join us from North Road Investment Counsel, so I've got to say goodbye to you. But before I do, you're watching from your home in BC. I know you travel a lot for work, but you're watching your home province of Alberta enter a very dynamic year.
Yes.
And
yes.
The premier, you like how I put that?
Sure, that was well put.
And the premier's just announced this referendum is going to happen on the 19th of October, and there's going to be a bunch of questions on there. A budget is going to drop later this week, and people expect it's going to be kind of a bad news budget. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow. What's one story? I know you still have, you left a big piece of your heart in Alberta, or Alberta has a big piece of your heart, however you want to put it. What's one story, that Alberta-based story, that you're keeping an eye on from BC?
Just where's this separatist dynamic going to go? That's the one I'm paying attention to. How much fuel is how much momentum is that going to get, and what's going to happen with the referendum? Yeah.
Obvious answer. And
as an Albertan, I hate to be obvious about it, but I'm like, man, I come here all the time. Yeah. Do I need a passport? Or is this?
No. I'm of two thoughts on this. Number one, it's not going to happen. But number two, we can't take it lightly. So these are my, if I'm Lady Justice, those are my two things.
Yeah, I think, what is it? Take it seriously, but not literally, or vice versa when they talk about that. Trump. Yeah, something like that.
It's good to see you, man.
You too, Ryan.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Also, just a bit of credit on the way out. I like how you support other journalists. You recommended 5 different folks here that are not and not on your outlets, and you're encouraging people to support the work of other journalists, and I think that shows character. Nice job, Arno.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
There's a reason why we keep asking you back, pal.
Well, keep watching this guy too, listeners. Yeah,
I appreciate that. That's Arno Kopecky joining us right here in the Real Talk studio. Friends, check out ucan.ca. Before we get to Cary Williams, I want to make sure this is on your radar. UCAN, we're talking about supporting young people in many different ways. This is a nonprofit charitable organization that's doing exactly that, helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They do that through a number of different programs, including their Verto programs, their Road to Work programs as well, and then their Relentless program. That's the 12 to 18-year-olds. These are the young people, kind of a top 50 list, young folks that are interacting with Edmonton police. Man, some of the files that you hear about there, these are young people's lives, really, really gut-wrenching, but the team at UCAN is opening doors and creating opportunities. They're also making sure that the young adults that are participating in UCAN are finding employment opportunities. The Road to Work program is a great example of that, where young adults get the skills and safety training necessary to enter the construction, roadwork, and traffic safety sectors. This is an earn while you learn type scenario. So a great opportunity for young people who are packed with potential. They just need a door in front of them. They'll walk through it on their own, and UCAN Youth Services is opening those doors. If you're in charge of your company's philanthropy or partnerships, if you and your family are talking about estate planning, as an example, we encourage you to consider UCAN Youth Services online at ucan.ca. If your family is looking to upgrade your space, whether that's a dream walk-in closet, maybe a totally custom garage, maybe you're finally going to get that guest room ready to welcome visitors, doubling as a home office, a Murphy bed could be perfect for you. We wholeheartedly recommend California Closets of Canada, with custom closets, systems, and solutions for the entire home. You've got nothing to lose sitting down with a California Closets designer to talk about your space, to talk about your budget, and go from there. For those of you that think you could never afford California Closets, let me assure you that is not the case. Their first design level, practical simplicity, will wow you. And I'm talking about the price included. Everything they build and install is guaranteed for life. You can get that conversation started today by requesting a free consultation online at californiaclosets.ca. I didn't even on purpose invoke estate planning as we welcome Cary Williams back to the show, our good buddy from North Road Investment Counsel. But I saw your eyes kind of light up.
Oh,
that's your wheelhouse.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about that some more.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Jeez. Well, once a month, we're thrilled to welcome you and Marshall as well, your team member over at North Road Investment Counsel, with interesting insights into the world of business, investment, estate planning, retirement planning, the whole 9 yards. But this month, we're going to take a bit of a different angle on it. Everybody is talking about AI and how AI is impacting everybody's life, regardless of what they do for work, regardless of where they live. And I guess for you guys, probably no different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, if I could be so bold, I would say, I think 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say January 2026 is the date when everything changed.
Really?
When we really look back and go, holy smokes, that was the time. I think lots of folks think it was when ChatGPT was released, but I think January is going to be the time, January 2026.
Why is that?
It's just wild. In January, Claude, which is one of the main LLM platforms from Anthropic, released Cowork, which moved from their programming from being, let me give you some advice through a chatbot, to let me do your work for you. That's what Cowork really became. And then a couple days later, or let's say a week later, they released a whole bunch of plugins around this system, and it included legal, finance, like a bunch of these kind of professional work plugins to do that kind of work. And I think it took the world by storm, at least in the tech and professional world. So things like, can you review my legal contract for me and give me advice? Yep, no problem. And clearly Anthropic very clearly states, listen, you should do this with a lawyer. So they're protecting their butts. But what I'm hearing is this is really, really, really powerful. And so I think this is the moment where we kind of go, holy smokes, the robot overlords are here to take our jobs.
Yeah, I was in a meeting yesterday, and I won't say who I was talking to because I'm not sure they want to be dragged into this conversation, but somebody in a very high-profile fundraising role, a very successful hospitality entrepreneur, and a third individual who, if I describe it, will immediately identify him, so I won't say. But people from 3 different walks of life, and I mentioned that you were coming on the show to talk about AI, and what unfolded was about a 20-minute sharing exercise on how it is impacting each of them in their daily lives, in their professional lives, even in their personal lives. One of the guys talked about how he had one of the services, one of the platforms design custom schedule management software for him. And then he worked with it over a number of weeks to tweak it, and he says now it basically runs his entire show, which blew my mind. But it reiterated to me that the reach is pervasive, and it's touching every industry. Like you said, nobody's going to use ChatGPT to defend themselves in a manslaughter trial. But when it comes to, for example, maybe reviewing the terms of a new lease, or maybe reviewing the terms of a corporate deal before you pass it along to your $600 an hour lawyers, I would imagine, I'm not trying to take a big swipe at our friends that work as lawyers, but that would be one industry of many where I'd be sweating a little bit. I mean, to take a look at our industry, if I was an advertising copywriter, I'd be sending out resumes right now looking for something different.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, even if you just think about it, like who does your social media? Does Johnny do it, or do you guys
we collaborate?
Collaborate. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I told you, listen, for a $20 subscription per month, you could have a system that reviews all of your old videos, cuts, slices and dices, music, video, the whole works, does it 24 hours a day, and it's $20 a month, and all you have to do is click, approve, and send.
You're describing something that we have, Johnny. Well, right? we have the service, right? But we've never actually released a video from that software service that we have.
No, but we use it. It basically takes what it thinks are the best moments from the show every day.
Yeah.
It gives us kind of a guide to see what it thinks would be, eye-catching or ear-grabbing, and we use it as kind of a guide.
Yeah, we do, and it's great because it's like it's an algorithm. Like, it's not a human.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that the human element is really important in stuff. Maybe that's why we don't get 10 million views on everything, because I'm sticking to the human element. Maybe I'm the biggest problem with the entire operation. But it's fascinating to see. We do have yet to release any of those videos that it's produced.
Yeah.
But like Johnny said, it gives us some insights into what the algorithm believes has the most viral potential, or the potential to have the biggest reach.
And here's the thing. This is probably the worst that software ever gets.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's generative and it's learning. So it's figuring out how to get better and better and better and better and better over time. And the AI companies right now are getting a lot of money to continue to make themselves better.
So one of the angles that came up yesterday in this meeting was that as soon as these new tools are announced, and as these options are available by way of AI, the markets are responding, and not in a good way. One of the guys referenced a recent announcement. I think it was from OpenAI, and he said IBM stock dropped like 10% the next day as a result. I mean, this is right. I mean, this is what you guys do, is watching markets, watching how the financial world is adjusting based on this technology. Can you take us further into that?
Yeah, and in a way, it's almost counterintuitive. Like, you would think, okay, if AI is the big thing, then I should be invested in technology. And yet, what we're seeing is, as an example, I'll use a couple of ETFs, exchange traded funds, things that are traded like a stock but are a basket of securities, just to give you an indication. So let's look at two sectors, okay? Let's look at tech, so in particular software. So iShares has an ETF for the expanded tech software, and it's minus 27% year to date since January 1st.
Wow.
Guess where energy's at for U.S. energy ETF from iShares? Plus 22 year to date. Whereas last year they were close. They were like plus 5 and plus 7.
So what does that tell you?
So we're seeing this massive shift where suddenly markets are trying to tell us, hey, we're not certain that this rosy picture we had for software companies is as rosy as we thought it was even a few weeks ago or a few months ago. Suddenly AI may be coming to eat the technology software companies. And maybe they're not going bankrupt, but maybe just their margins compress. Maybe they're no longer as profitable as they once were because AI companies are going to step in and take eat some of their lunch, so to speak, right? And so one of the things that we try and help folks understand is you can invest in a good company, but if you invest at a bad price or the world just changes, you might not have a great investment. And so that picture around diversifying, being really, really thoughtful, trying not to predict the future, just prepare, because nobody right now knows what's coming. Nobody knows where the future is going around this stuff. Markets are working every single day. Millions of investors and pensions and institutions are buying and selling and trying to find the right price for all of these companies and these assets, and letting them do the competition and you diversifying is one of the things that we're really, really, really recommending for folks. And in moments like this where change is just so dramatic and uncertain, diversifying more than it feels in the past would have been enough would be something that I would suggest. And I should say, as I suggest that, to be clear, to make the lawyers happy, not investment advice.
Yes.
Get help from a professional. Don't go away from this and suddenly start selling your tech companies or buying energy or any of those things. Not investment advice. But for sure, we're seeing a moment now where I think folks really, if they haven't looked at their portfolio in the last 6 weeks, they need to take a look. They need to start considering what they want to do because, one, markets are really under the sort of surface. Turmoil is dramatic. And two, these tools are coming to our jobs. If you're not already using these tools in your job, if you work in front of a screen, in the next 1 month to 5 years, your job is going to change dramatically.
In 5 years, I feel like it feels like 1 month to 5 months.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Interesting comments here in our live chat as we talk to Cary Williams from North Road Investment Counsel. You can find him online, by the way, at northroadic.com. And when Cary says talk to an investment advisor, we recommend that you talk to the advisors at North Road Investment Counsel. But Super Chat Ken says AI is very much like the internet boom prior to the year 2000. The technology will clearly be prolific, but the capital expansion is very likely far overblown. He says some big winners and big losers will shake out. You're nodding your head. Do you agree?
Yeah, the numbers that I saw is that the expectation for capital expenditure from I think it's the 5 largest, what they call hyperscalers. So folks building out the infrastructure, the data centers. So this is Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, and Oracle, $646 billion this year.
Jeez.
And that's up from, just over $400 billion. And, you look at those numbers and like, how do we quantify those? $646 billion, I think, puts that spending ahead of the economy of Sweden. Like, it's enormous. 2% of U.S. GDP is expected to be AI build out. It's just enormous numbers. So part of this shakeout, which started sort of October-ish last year, is for lack of a better term, a downgrade of those companies because they went from cash-rich, high-margin, arguably the best businesses in the history of the world, I would say, over the last decade, just churning out money, to being like, oh, I've got to spend billions on assets suddenly. And what does that mean for the future of my business? Am I as good as I was last decade versus next decade? I think the market is trying to say, hey, we have a lot of questions here and they're not getting answered. What are we going to do? And so we're starting to see, folks, investors move, I would say, from tech into these, real world, what can AI not disrupt type industries like energy. And, arguably, I would say energy might be a beneficiary of AI. I've got a buddy who's up at CNRL, and he said, even a couple of years ago, I'm using AI every day. Like, I need to figure out a work order, or when was this work done previously? I'm getting in there and searching our internal AI.
Yeah.
So now, how accurate is that? I don't know. It's anecdotal evidence, but I think it's coming.
I don't know if the guys I was meeting with yesterday knew that the conversation would be invoked 5 or 6 times when I'm talking to you, but it was also one of them has a son, a young man, 22 years old, his son is, and he said he's not, he was considering pursuing a career, I think it was in law, said, but he said even as a teenager when he got his first car, he was the one that would like pull the motor apart and love to rebuild things, and so he said there was kind of an interesting conversation where he knew his son was not connecting with his post-secondary journey the way that he felt like he needed to, and he felt like when his son asked him to sit down and have a talk, it was almost like his son was asking him permission to go into the trades instead. And this guy was so thrilled that his son was connecting with something. He thinking now going into carpentry. And he said, I said, well, why was it that you were so enthusiastic that he's choosing his own path or that he's not feeling pressure from you to pursue a certain career? He goes, no. He said, the number one thing I'm most excited about is that is a career path that will not be taken over by AI. He said it's AI proof, the trades.
Yeah.
Maybe to a certain degree.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you seen the videos of the Unitree robots out of China?
No.
Oh, man. Yeah, the robot overlords are coming, man.
So are you suggesting that the trades may not be
I mean,
AI-proof?
in the short term, I think that's probably the things we need to be thinking about. What are the areas that humans need to be focused on? And probably it's physical for a while. It's emotional, I would say, right? And it's probably creative. And there's this chatter happening that I think is getting more and more true, which is, an AI is not coming for your job right away, but a person with AI probably is.
Yeah.
Right? It's becoming so powerful that I would say it's not perfect by any means. You still have to be aware that there are problems and there are hallucinations and there are those kind of things in these tools, but they're probably as good as a inexperienced junior employee, maybe.
I'm just watching videos right now of Unitree robots. As you brought it up, this is mind-blowing. Watching a robot, you can check out my screen, watching a robot assemble and build a robot.
That's...
I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for this right now, Cary. Ms. KD says on Bill Maher, just like about a week ago, or less than a week ago, she says, is it Stephanie Rule, hundreds or even thousands of jobs are going to be cut. Do corporations need to be taking positions on this, better communicating around this? I mean, a lot of the stuff is very sensitive, right? I mean, the implications on this on the workforce, a lot of people will be able to accomplish more with less, but at the same time, there are going to be a lot of people that sort of fall on the altar.
Yeah, disruption, right? I mean, I think the big takeaway here is that the future is maybe more uncertain than it has felt in a while, and it's felt uncertain for a while. This is a politics show. There's a piece here which is around, from corporations, at least publicly, that they were focused on AI. Companies have been at the forefront here. I'm not sure that politically we're talking about AI as much as corporately. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, could you name Canada's AI policy?
Well, we were just talking about it, not Canada's AI policy. We have had Canada's AI minister, Evan Solomon, on the show just in our most recent episode, talking to Supriya Dwivedi. I mean, it's a gut punch of a story, but OpenAI, ChatGPT had banned but had not notified law enforcement, and Canada's AI minister had responded and said lawmakers, not on the corporations, kind of a thing. So I mean, it is in our discussion, but I don't think in so many ways as me and I won't speak for this audience, but I definitely don't totally understand the full implications of AI yet. I don't know that anybody does.
And nobody does.
Right? I mean, something about it blows my mind every day or every week.
Yeah, it's pure magic.
And I think that also with a political machine that is slow to move and slow to turn, especially when you're talking about legislation and dealing with big tech. And just look at Canada's dust up with big tech over the past couple of years.
It's happening down there right now, and there's so much happening around energy costs, around AI.
In fact, I'll disagree with that. But before we run out of time, I mean, I know you do have to go, but I want to. So, as citizens, as investors, we've been talking about sort of what do we do with this information. You've provided some pretty compelling points here, and now people are going to go, what are you supposed to do about it? I want to make sure I don't miss anything.
Listen, I firmly believe living as an optimist is way better than living as a pessimist. So let me start by the optimistic side. These things are pure magic. Like, if you do not have a paid subscription to one of these, because the free version is very different from the paid version, go and do it. Like, spend the $20 a month, $30 a month, whatever it's going to cost, go and do it and just play with it, because they're pure magic. And do something that you know a lot about with it, and ask it to do stuff and tell you stuff, because it's really incredible. You're going to notice there are mistakes. As an example, we just had prompted one to write a response to an RFP, a request for a proposal, for us, just to see how it would do. And it's not great, but it's 80% of the way there, and that's pretty incredible in one paragraph prompt plus 4 minutes of work, right? But
which one do you use?
So I personally like Claude. That's from Anthropic, but I think ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini are all considered very, very strong models. One area. So let me get back to your question, which is, okay, as citizens, what do we do? One, I think we need to give ourselves the time and space to play. Right? Like, this is, quite honestly, it's really fun. If you haven't played with it, it's really, really fun. It's incredible. It'll
blow your mind.
It'll blow your mind. It's like magic. So go and play with it. Have some fun with it. Okay. That's going to help you get prepared for what these conversations are like and what's happening, whether your interest is in markets or in politics or in your own job or your kids or grandkids, any of those things. So go and have it do something or talk to it about something you're interested in, something your grandkids are interested in. If your grandkids use a word you've never heard of, ask it to explain the history behind it. It will give you that in about 45 seconds, and it'll be pretty darn accurate. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing I think as citizens. The second thing is, as we've talked a lot about, you really need to start thinking about the cyber issues that come from this. So all of our information is being captured by these companies, right? So what does that mean? How much information am I willing to share? Lots of folks are using these as personal therapists. Is that a good idea? All of these kind of questions start coming out. And, you've talked about this on the show. We have a digital risk advisor at our firm, so this is top of mind for us. We're telling all of our clients, you need to be prepared that someday there is going to be an AI that will mimic Cary and will call you, and it will probably be, potentially fraud, scam, any of those things are totally possible now. And you need to be prepared. And how are we going to prepare you for that? So you should probably be doing the same with your family. Like, are grandma, mom and dad prepared for the call from Junior, who is in Mexico, who is in the, violence that's happening down there and needs money? And it's not really Junior in the violence. It's an AI that's pushing all the emotional buttons. How do I get money down there so I can get them home as fast as possible? That is in the world that we're living in right now. That is totally possible, completely. Right.
I'll let people know that we talk about the digital risk advisory services. It's something that sets you guys apart, and I think is a great resource. And I want to let the audience know. I'll show it right now on my screen. NorthRoadIC.com is where you can click on what makes North Road different. One of those is their digital risk advisory services, and you guys have the digital risk quiz that people can take at no cost. It just takes about a minute to complete. What are people going to take away from that? Let me reframe the question. I bet you the majority of people that take that digital risk questionnaire probably recognize either vulnerabilities or blind spots that they didn't even know existed.
Yeah, this is a short version of the assessment we do with our clients, and we just put it out there for free because it's just so important. So if you go and do it, it's going to kick out a few areas for you just to say, hey, here are some things you need to think about working on, and then you can go and take it from there.
But the sit down's the real magic.
Yeah, for sure. So let me get to the second half of your original question, which is, what do we do as investors? So let me touch on, I'll say 3 things. Okay. So the first thing is, more than anything else, I think as investors, we have to embrace the fact that no one knows anything. All right. And just be okay. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncertain. Nobody knows. And that's okay, because then we can prepare rather than try and predict what's going to happen. Right? Diversify more than we would expect. Okay, so that's the first thing. I think the second thing for 2026, be really, really careful with FOMO, with fear of missing out. We're going to have likely at least 3 IPOs, initial public offerings, from Anthropic, OpenAI, ChatGPT maker, and SpaceX, which is now also XAI. Those are likely coming this year. That's pretty strong in the rumor mill that's being worked on. Initial public offerings are generally, in the academic research, not great investment opportunities on average, right? And folks
Why? Just because there's so much hype?
The structure is challenging. So you're taking a public company, it's going through investment banking to be brought to the public markets, or you're taking a private company, through investment banking to be brought to the public markets. There's a bunch of marketing that has to happen there. There's a bunch of former investors that probably want money out. All of those things sort of collide in the first weeks to months to years of an IPO. And they make it a little more challenging than just, okay, what's this company? What do they do? How do they make money? And what's the price, right? There's a little more kind of under the hood there. So if you're interested in that stuff, you got to do some research and start understanding the implications of an IPO rather than just, oh, SpaceX, space monopoly. Let's put data centers in space, and that's exciting. Let me own it. That's a little different from really looking at the IPO opportunity. So that's number 2. Okay, so nobody knows anything. Diversify. Watch out for FOMO. Okay, number 3, second opinion. If you have not had something look at or someone look at your portfolio prior to this, I really, really, really think right now is the time. Okay. So whether that's I'm going to feed my portfolio into an AI and have them tell me, or that's I'm going to get a professional, which would be my recommendation, go ahead and do it. We think this is so important, Ryan, that I'm going to tell you something we've never done before. Okay. We're going to give a discount on our financial planning project services for Jesperson listeners. Okay. So typically a second opinion, we do these projects. They're not our investment clients, but just folks want to hire us for a number of hours.
Got it.
Right. They don't want to have to hire us for investment. Maybe they do it themselves, whatever. That's fine. Generally a second opinion where we take statements, we crunch all the data behind what you hold, we look at fees, we do all that stuff. Let's say it's about 5 hours of work. All right. If folks hire us for 4 hours of work, we'll give them an hour for free.
Nice.
Okay. So if you hire us for at least 4 hours, we'll give you an extra hour for free. And we'll get this done because I think it's a really important time. That shift from tech to energy, as an example that I used earlier, is really, really significant. And we don't know where the world's headed with AI. So let's button up the portfolios and move forward.
I love that. We had a glowing review, by the way. I read it on a recent episode from a Real Talker, Michael, who had reached out to you and the team over there and said the same thing. He said, I just wanted a second set of eyes. He didn't want to completely detach himself.
Yeah,
I think he may have had a background in financial management, but anyway, he said that he appreciated it. We love the real life, real world testimonials are the best.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm afraid to let you take a look at mine. All my self-directed stuff is a disaster. I hit a home run on a gold mining company like 10 years ago, and it's just floating everything else, which is just in the toilet. I like many others widely anticipated that big green rush 2016, 2017, 2018 as cannabis was legalized in Canada, and a few people got very rich and a lot of people lost their shirts.
Yeah, this is not uncommon in trends, right?
Yeah.
In tech in particular, I mean, maybe I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with you, but there's some really interesting writing and research from the last .com boom and bust from Carlotta Perez around the trend, like the life cycle of technology as it comes through. And typically it is a rush in and then a collapse, and then the technology takes off after the collapse to change the world. Right. And so
you're telling me to hold. You're telling me to hold. I'm like Mel Gibson in Braveheart. Hold. These are penny stocks.
That's
anyway,
so funny.
Not to diminish.
But it
the
happens in these
seriousness.
trends, right? It does. Yeah. As money rushes in and prices go up. And as I said earlier, you can have even a great investment, and if you pay the wrong price, a great company, and if you pay the wrong price, it could become a bad investment. Yeah. So we have to be careful. But anyway, to finish off, because I know you got to get going, and I do as well. If folks are really interested in a second opinion right now, they can go to our website, send us a quick note through there, say Jesperson second opinion, and we'll acknowledge they saw the show and see if we can help them out.
I love that. That's Cary Williams, one of the team members over at North Road Investment Counsel. You can also, by the way, sign up for their free monthly newsletter. Just scroll to the bottom of the page at northroadic.com. That's also where you can find the digital risk advisory quiz once a month. We're thrilled to welcome Cary and his team member Marshall to the studio with great real-life advice. And if you have a question that you'd love for them to take on, feel free to send it to us to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Great to see you, brother, as always. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate having you.
You got it. Real Talker's back in a quick second. But first, we got to let you know, of course, that these conversations don't happen without the support of amazing partners like the team at Park Power, powering our Real Talk live chat every single episode. Park Power is your friendly local utilities provider with electricity, natural gas, and internet. And of course, paying less for comparable or better service is always a positive, but there's many more reasons than that why we're proud to partner with Park Power, and that includes their commitment to local Alberta nonprofits. They share 10% of their electricity proceeds with nonprofits, and when you bring your business over, you choose from a list which charity you'd like to help support. How cool is that? More money in your pocket, quality utilities service, and no cancellation fees. Get that. No commitments with Park Power. They're so confident you're going to love their service that you can cancel or change your rate anytime with no exit fees. If you'd like to see even more, including an incentive to shave $150 off your first bill, check out parkpower.ca/realtalk for bundling promo codes exclusive for Real Talk audience members.
I love it. Shaved my bill in more than half.
I love it, dude.
I got my bill yesterday. It was in just 2 digits instead of 3. I'm like, I love Park Power.
See, like I said, about the North Road thing, about the Helm clothing, there's nothing like real life, real world testimonials, including this show's technical director. Also wanted to give you a heads up, friends, a couple of episodes from now, another edition of Alberta Wins presented by Play Alberta. We've had back-to-back Olympic features submitted by Real Talkers to talk@ryanjesperson.com. If you see an Alberta company, an Albertan individual making an impact in the world around them, send us the story. It could be featured every Thursday here on the show presented by Play Alberta. Alberta's wins every single day on the Play Alberta app or at playalberta.ca. Literally hundreds of popular casino games to choose from, some of them with jackpots worth millions, plus a major casino winner every hour, and all the revenue stays right here in our home province of Alberta. If you like what you're hearing, download the app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. Of course, you got to be 18 or over to play, and when you gamble, please use your game sense.
AI is going to take over the world.
It actually is, though. It actually is.
Yeah, but it's I'm an optimistic, like our last guest,
Like
our good
like
friend Cary. I was listening. I always listen. I'll just get in because I know we still got more stuff to do. I'll just say one thing. I watched former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt. He talks a lot about how AI is going to change us for the better. He also talks about the downsides too. But he went through kind of a list of now till 2050 of how it's going to change our lives, and just gave like a point for every 5 years, and it's absolutely incredible. The upsides are way outweighing the downsides to AI. So I'll just give you a line from each one. I wrote them down because I was like, we're going to talk about AI probably in the next few weeks with Cary. From now till 2030, it's basically like Cary was talking about. Have it be your personal assistant because it's going to learn. It's already like 80% there. Like Cary says, you get it to do a task. Yes, there's always going to be small mistakes. Ryan, you've been burned by it. I have too. You check it over. And if you give it 10 points, 2 of them will be wrong, right? But AI is really going to become your personal everyday assistant in the next 5 years. 2030 to 35, it's going to start being embedded in infrastructure. So, traffic lights, for example, and routing and designing cities and stuff like that. It's going to really tell you how to do it the best. We all know, like most times you build a city, you build Main Street and then you go out, and then what happens? All the city's streets are too small. It will literally tell you, like, okay, this is the migration path for like population growth in this area, most likely. Here's how big you need to build streets, and et cetera. But 2035 to 2040 is really where it's going to get cool. The AI kind of symbiosis. I know this is the one that kind of scares you. Like, not talking about like embedded chips, but wearable AI that like
Meta
health,
glasses.
health predictors, where it would constantly monitor your health and let you know, like, hey, these are warning signs of a heart attack, or these are warning signs of cancer, etc. It's going to be really good for stuff like that. And then 2040 to 2050 is where things just get crazy, and it might be a little scary. But the good parts of AI are going to be like climate mitigation systems that literally like predict where disasters are going to happen, saving lives. Autonomous transportation. I'm talking about on your way to work, you might be able to get into an autonomous vehicle and like have a nap, like literally, because they're so safe that they can get you from A to B now.
No drunk driving.
Exactly. And there's tons
Idiots will still drink and drive.
Of course they will. But radical acceleration in material science stuff in space, like Cary was talking about, and then fully AI coordinated disaster protection and response, which will equate to cheaper clean energy, reduce global poverty. There'll be optimized distribution systems for places like Africa and stuff like that, where like people are fighting over food. It would give the right amounts to people. So there are a lot of upsides. Are there downsides? Of course. There's always going to be people who try to use this to steal from you, to fake that there's someone else, to use it for nefarious purposes. But the upsides of our lives in like the next 15 to 20 years are going to far outweigh that stuff.
I saw here Tracy D says, none of the ecological issues are ever mentioned. We have had the conversation on the show. We'll continue to have them. And of course, it's not nothing, right? Similar conversations around like Bitcoin mining and things like that. Like I think the tech, we talk about data centers, what they're looking to build outside Grand Prairie. I know I'm talking about different things here, but there is a common thread, and that there is a significant ecological impact. Tracy, not that we've never talked about it, but we definitely should talk about it more. I'll take your point. She goes on to say, and what about the psychological and educational issues? 80s Fanify says, or the privacy issues, which is another great point for sure. I noticed that it was S. Jane, I think, in our live chat that had specifically referenced the ecological issues. Was curious for your take on it. I mean, the water that they use, the power that they use, these are all serious issues, and industry, but any industry or many industries have consumed significant amounts of natural resources, including water and power, and it's something that the public should probably know more about. That probably starts with us.
We had the same concerns in 2000s when the internet came around, right?
Yeah.
And there was this big kind of boom, and the same people were saying the same things. The bubble's going to burst, privacy issues, electricity, all these things. And what happened? Yes, I put a comment in the chat because somebody had said something about that. It was painful for some people, and investors especially, but it was transformative. The same people complaining about AI might have been around complaining about the internet back then, but now they're in our chat, interacting with us in real time. They're getting, free news, whether they're getting all these things every day via the internet that have changed our lives for the better, right? Did things have to be regulated, and did we figure things out? And now there's all these securities in place to prevent people from getting scammed. Yes, it's going to be the same thing AI. The difference with AI though is when you talk about like data centers and mining for crypto and all these things that cause huge environmental impacts, you can literally ask AI to improve itself. Hey, how do I use less energy with you? How are we going to stop this from happening? AI is going to constantly be regulating.
It's going to tell us to drink less water.
This whole thing about like I know you look at the AI robots today and it's a little scary, but to me it's like, man, these are the things we don't want to do anymore. These really continuously monotonous slavery kind of tasks are going to be replaced by AI and robots. I mean, you're still going to go to Tim Hortons and a human's going to hand you a coffee. That's never going to change, right? And yes, we'll have to reformulate certain jobs, but it was the same thing with the internet. The internet's going to take all our jobs. Well, not really. We just became internet experts, literally every single one of us, from the time we can hold an iPad. Your kids, like, we're all internet experts now, right? We grow up that way. And it's going to be the same way with AI. I can see that coming.
Kyle says, as someone who's actively working on AI projects in Western Canada, the water and environmental issues are way overblown, says Kyle. We'll see. S. Jane goes on to say, by the way, climate mitigation systems that use egregious amounts of water, are there more sustainable plans and efforts in the work for powering AI? You have to assume yes, even from an efficiency or cost standpoint, but it's something that demands a closer look, and one that we'll commit to. You've noticed on the show, we want to hit, there's a number of things. There's probably 50 subjects that we have lists on that are constantly on our radar, right? Like, today we're talking about, human trafficking as an example. And then we wanted to talk to Arno about the Cowichan decision, obviously interesting about conservative convention, but federal political happenings. And then Cary's in to talk about one angle on AI. And then, we'll circle back to there's so much ground to cover, and it's why we appreciate this engaged audience. Yeah. The Meta Glasses thing came up, and I wanted to read this email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This from Jackassica, who, if you know ink art in Canada, Jackassica, a tattoo artist. She's the owner of Capital Tattoo and a wonderful friend of this show. She wrote in a few days ago and said, I wanted to touch on your conversation. It was a week ago that you and I, Johnny, were talking about Meta Glasses and their uses. And she says, over Christmas, I gifted my partner a pair, and we've actually been using them a lot more than I expected. She says, as a professional tattoo artist, they've been awesome. She says, I can record content completely hands-free, which lets potential clients see my process from my exact POV. She says it feels more immersive and authentic than setting up a tripod or constantly adjusting a phone. She says, and as a mom of 2 hockey players, it's been even better. I can finally watch their games instead of fumbling with my phone trying to record every single shift. I get to actually be present and enjoy the moment while still keeping the memories. She says, and I'll admit, the glasses can be a little fun after dark too. I have no idea what she means by that.
You know exactly.
I don't know.
What she means.
I don't know what she means, but that actually hadn't occurred to me. But that's a very good point as well.
Why I want AI to take over so I can have a relationship with it.
She says. Now that said, I do agree. The facial recognition feature, this is what you and I were talking about. The facial recognition feature does feel a bit sketchy, and it does raise some important privacy questions. But overall, for us, the ability to be more hands-free and more present has outweighed the concerns. She says, I guess like most tech, it really comes down to how thoughtfully we choose to use it. That from Jackassica. That's a great take.
I think that's the line at the end that I agree the most with. I mean, from everything from your phone to AI to the internet, it's a tool. It's how you use it, right? And I tend to be the optimistic person. I know there's people out there who are going to always push back. People are evil. People are going to use this for whatever. But the majority of people just want their lives to be as easy as possible when it comes to the stuff that takes them out of what really matters in life. Love, connection with their family members, relationships. And if AI can give you more time to divulge yourself to that stuff, then I am all for it. And we will figure out, the energy concerns and the privacy concerns, because that's what we do. But here's the thing. You can keep pushing back. You can keep being like, the boomer mentality. And sorry, I don't mean to, disrespect anyone, but like AI is dangerous. I'll never buy into it, blah, blah, blah. But you're too late. AI is here. It's involved in careers. It's involved in economy. It's
everything.
It's here already. So you either want to get on board and be one of those voices that says, hey, here's how we make it safer. Or you can be one of those people like me who's I'm just going down the lazy river, man. I'm letting all the smart people do the work. And I see an update, I go use it. Like for me, my life is just easier. But to just push against it, like it's already here.
You said lazy river, and all I can think about is being on vacation.
I mean,
there's nothing like a lazy river float.
The only thing I hate about it is like the emails I get now. I'm like, God damn, like 85% of these people now are using these AI, right? Because I'm like, this isn't how you're talking in person. I know you, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, that's a little annoying. I just love how it's made life easier.
Yeah. Before we wrap today, we had an impromptu contest. We love to do this, guys, because the truth is we love to put our merch in as many hands as possible. And we also, if you haven't noticed by now, based on your loyal support of this show, including on Patreon with YouTube channel memberships, by supporting our sponsors, we love opportunities to just let you know how much we appreciate you guys, how much we love you guys. And so on the fly, as we were talking about Matt Genereux's defection from the federal Conservatives to the governing Liberals last week, I mused out loud. I wondered out loud off the top of my head, had anybody, because we learned of the news live on the show. Super Chat Ken that punched it in our live chat. Ken directed us toward the Prime Minister Mark Carney's Blue Sky account, where we saw that 4 minutes earlier he had confirmed that General was crossing. So we were kind of just shooting from the hip. It was myself and Spencer Fernando, the conservative, or now he says independent journalist, and we kind of sorted it out. And I wondered aloud in that show, was this a first? Was this the first time that a conservative member of parliament in Alberta, a federal MP, an Alberta MP, had ever crossed from the Conservatives to the Liberals? And we said that if any of you was able to track down information, that we would send you a prize pack full of Real Talk swag, including some of the stuff you can't buy, like Real Talk matches, Real Talk lighters to light your incense, guys, to light your candles. That's what we're hoping for there. And whatever else needs to be lit. And then, of course, some of the stuff that you can buy, like our Real Talk studio issue mugs, like the new mug you see here in my hand. By the way, you could pick yours up at ryanjesperson.com/merch. And so we wanted to shout out a few Real Talkers, and I'm going to let you know right now that while one of you was 3 minutes faster than the other, and then that other was 4 minutes faster than the other, so within 7 minutes, 3 of you wrote in, we are going to be sending recognition, a thank you, a Real Talk prize pack to all 3 of you. And it was Kyle who wrote in first, followed by Chantal G, followed by Chantal V, and all 3 of them correctly identified. Are you ready for it? Jack Horner. Now, Jack Horner, I'm going to go to 2 here. And I know I just threw you a curveball, Johnny, and you showed us a photo of Bud Olson, but I want to show Jack Horner, okay, was the original progressive conservative MP from Alberta, okay? And back in the month and year of my birth, Jack Horner crossed to join the Liberal Party that was then being led by Pierre Trudeau, okay? And he was immediately appointed to cabinet. This was one of those kind of plum appointments, one of those carrots that was dangled, first as a minister without a portfolio and later as the Minister of Industry, Trade and Commerce. The move was highly controversial. It's seen as one of the most famous examples of backlash following a floor crossing when it comes to federal Canadian politics, as Mr. Horner himself was defeated in the 1979 election, widely regarded as voter backlash to the switch. And so Jack Horner was the one that all 3 of you, that's Kyle, Chantal G, and Chantal V, had correctly identified as switching from the Progressive Conservatives to the Liberals. Now, Bud Olson was the original, but here's the asterisk. Because we had asked, and a few of you did write in and talk about Bud Olson. A few of you referenced Bud Olson. One of you claimed to have an interesting family connection to Bud Olson, which I thought was very interesting. And while he did cross from a conservative party per se to the federal Liberals, he did not technically cross from the Conservatives to the Liberals. Back in 1957, when he was first elected, Bud Olson was elected as a social credit member of Parliament. And 10 years later, he crossed the floor amid like an absolutely disastrous circumstance. Support was collapsing for the SoCreds. And so he crossed the floor to join the Liberal Party of Canada, serving in cabinet under Trudeau, including roles such as agriculture minister. Now, curiously, unlike MP Horner's switch, Bud Olson's move was not as politically damaging long term. If you take a look at his political career, really fascinating how it played out. So originally elected as a SoCred member of Parliament from Medicine Hat, he was defeated when Diefenbaker's progressive Conservatives essentially swept in 1958, but then Olson was reelected in 62, 63, and 65. When he crossed the floor in 67 and then supported Pierre Trudeau's candidacy for Liberal leadership the year after, he narrowly won re-election as an MP in 1968, which is always interesting. When a floor crosser wins re-election, that is definitely notable. And he served in that role as an MP and Minister of Agriculture until he was defeated by a progressive conservative by the name of Bert Hargrave in 1972. Now, Olson fought to get back into politics and ultimately did not as an elected MP. But in 1977, the same year that Jack Horner crossed, Olson was named to Senate as Prime Minister. Pierre Trudeau appointed him to the Senate of Canada. He served as leader of the opposition in the Senate in 1979 and then returned to cabinet when the Trudeau Liberals returned to power in 1980. So he kind of bounced around a lot, which is particularly interesting. Chaired the Cabinet Committee on Economic Development for a few years. He was the minister responsible for the Northern Pipeline Agency for 4 years approximately, government leader in the Senate for a couple of years, and perhaps most notably, it was Bud Olson's job to promote the NEP, the Trudeau government's very unpopular national energy program in Alberta. So a little bit of Alberta history for you there involving Bud Olson and Jack Horner. And a shout out to Kyle, to Chantal V, and Chantal G. All three of you will be in touch. Katie will be in touch, and we'll be sending you your Real Talk prize back. Thanks so much for participating. I think of the More You Know commercials with the star that used to fly across the screen. Ding, ding, ding. So thanks to everybody for that. You guys keep us sharp, and we sure appreciate it. We're going to wrap today's episode as we're closing in on the 2-hour mark, and we know all of us have things that we need to get done. But before we go, I want to put on your radar what's coming up through the remainder of the week. As we wrap right now, I'll let you know that in our next episode of the show, we'll continue our conversations with the leading contenders in that federal NDP leadership race. We've talked to Avi Lewis. We've talked to Heather McPherson. Next episode of the show, Rob Ashton will join us to talk how he will lift that party back into the position where they strongly believe it needs to be. Alberta budget drops in less than 48 hours. We got you covered the rest of the week. Thanks for being a part of it. We'll talk again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.